In October of 1928, Virginia Woolf had one important question to ask society. What if Shakespeare had a sister? A sister with his same capacity to love theater, filled with a kind of intelligence and wit that is ready to present itself to the world. In this hypothetical scenario, Woolf describes that it is unthinkable that any woman in Shakespeare's day should have had Shakespeare's genius, for genius like Shakespeare's is not born among laboring, uneducated, servile people. Woolf describes women in such a way not because they are naturally submissive, but because of the patriarchal structures that subject them to men's stockings or mind the stews. Shakespeare himself noticed the different female and male divides that surrounded him in 18th century society, and thus his two main female characters in his play, Hamlet, Gertrude and Ophelia, are shaped by their roles as women. The way that Queen Gertrude receives social capital is by her approximation to men. This is evident when she's watching Hamlet's play attempting to reenact the murder of his father, and when player Queen continues to vow that she will never remarry. In response, Queen Gertrude notes that the lady doth protest too much. After Queen Gertrude remarried very fast to Hamlet's uncle Claudius, she becomes a reference point for the topic Hamlet highlights in his play, where he measures the virtue of women on whether they are loyal to their husband. Remarrying would mean that they are not being moral women, or in lack of better words, great wives. In this sense, her comment reflects the social expectations placed upon women like herself, whose identity only matters if it orbits that of men. Even when she is at close proximity to their orbit, she would find herself met by comments from Hamlet such as, "Fear thee, thy name is woman," because he was heard about her not grieving his father long enough. Such comments depict how women were seen in the 18th century, to the point that being fragile is not an attribute a woman would have, but all of what a woman could be. Like Queen Gertrude, Ophelia is also submissive to men throughout the play before her death. Despite being in love with Hamlet, she obeys her father, Polonius, when he commands her to stop seeing him. Despite having her own doubts, as she herself said to her father that Hamlet's love is an honorable fashion, she deflects authority to him and asks him what she should think. However, when Polonius is murdered by Hamlet, she starts taking more autonomy of her life and her thoughts. Throughout her distribution of flowers, Ophelia challenges the authority around her. She hands out rosemary for remembrance, pansies for thoughts, and rue for regret, using these flowers to point out what is wrong with the court. Woolf's rhetorical question about Shakespeare's fictional sister challenges our views on Gertrude and Ophelia, and instead, it presents a point that the characters' weaknesses arise from the structure of society that limits them as women. Although centuries have passed since both Shakespeare's time and Woolf's writing, the core issue she raises has not fully disappeared.
So, my passion for wanting to dive into the legal world specifically stemmed from my experience being a young girl in the workplace who faced a lot of adversity with men significantly older than me. I was pretty much preyed and groomed on by a 22-year-old when I was 16. And when I went to the higher ups of the organization while I was working for a nonprofit, they pretty much just completely dismissed what had happened to me. They told me it was my fault, that they had tried to warn me. And at the end of the day, I ended up facing all the consequences, both mentally and while I was there. And the person who had done all the damage just was able to go about his life and probably to this day doesn't think he did anything wrong. I would also add that in films or plays I have read from Shakespeare, such as Romeo and Juliet, back then in high school, middle school, I didn't really read much into it, but kind of this gender norm and this social norm that women were just expected to get married and have kids, and that was just what was expected of them. And I think Juliet challenged that, and I feel like I have experienced that a lot.
Around the world, women are still evaluated in relation to men and constrained by expectations that shape their choices and opportunities. In countries like Afghanistan, restriction on girls' educations have limited their ability to pursue intellectual and creative paths. In parts of India, women continue to face pressure surrounding marriage and family roles that can override personal ambitions. In Japan, workplace culture has long reflected expectations that women prioritize domestic responsibilities over career advancement, contributing to persistent gender gaps in leadership. Even in places like the United States, women in politics, entertainment, and professional spaces are often judged more harshly for their emotions, appearance, or personal decisions than their male counterparts. These examples suggest that while the forms of limitation might differ across cultures, the underlying pattern Woolf identified continues to persist.